Hey there YouTube, welcome to, I suppose you could say this is the first part of two videos, just going over a basic sort of army overview of both my French and my British. I decided to go with my British first because they are a lot bigger than my French. It started off with my French being a lot bigger than my British, but after I did those four Hanoverian units about a month or so ago, my British have really bombed ahead of my French. And the trouble with my French mainly is sort of lack of infantry. They do sort of outnumber my, well, as you see when I finally get around to doing the video. But basically, I decided to do my British first. So, as you can see, I just about managed to get them. I don't think I can just about get them in camera shot. There's a few bits just off to the side, but I'm going to do this handheld, so I apologise for any sort of wobbliness, but you can see that it starts over here and goes right the way across this, one of my 2x4 boards I decided to put up on the normal little unit that I normally film my my updates on. And yeah, I'll basically go in and show you. It's hugely bigger than when I did my very first sort of black powder update, when I more or less just finished the first starter set, like probably about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, and it really has jumped in size massively since then. So I'm going to go in and we're going to start off with a general. I've only got one general so far. This is the guy. You've seen him before. It's just a generic. He's obviously not named, and I don't think you can actually find a miniature. Although I have actually given him a name. I guess I made this guy the head of the 3rd British Infantry Division. So Lieutenant General or Count Charles Allen. But I guess this is a temporary figure, until I managed to actually find one to represent him. And as I have mentioned before, I put my command figures on a lot smaller bases because I play on a 6x4 table, and I don't want my command figures taking up premium space when I can have loads of infantry battalions. So that is the general. Quite a nice figure. I think he's from the Peninsular Officers Pack, and I think he's quite fitting for a general. I'm sure there's probably better general figures around, and eventually I'm sure I'll get hold of some parries, and maybe I'll sort of find a figure to sort of proxy as him as the actual proper head of 3rd British Infantry Division. So that is the general. Okay, next up we have a unit which is not necessarily part of my actual division, but I wanted some rifles, so these are sort of like an add-on. These would be attached. So we have a small regiment of, I suppose you could say, it'd probably be, well, I mean, I've kind of based them as a battalion, but they're not. They wouldn't actually be a battalion in real life. They'd be a lot smaller than that. Alas, the 3 and 2 figures on the bases. But I decided to mount them on the larger bases as opposed to my extra little 4 over here, which can be used as well. Eventually, I'm hoping that with my spare 95th rifles that I've got, I'll just build up a little sort of extra little splinter force, a bit like my I've got a little force of 8 Voltigeurs, which just basically operate on their own as a little unit. So that's what I plan to do with those little 4 guys on their own. But like I say, these guys aren't actually historically part of my my division, but they're sort of an add-on. And to tell the truth, when I first started, I really was kind of feeling odd about sort of adding units that weren't in my sort of historical division or corps, and basically now that, well, obviously as time's gone on, I really don't mind it, to tell the truth, and I'm sort of becoming more and more open to the idea, just because it allows access to units that obviously if I just followed the the hard straight plan of my infantry division, I wouldn't be able to actually use. So I think that's the only unit that's actually not, although possibly my cavalry. Yeah, obviously my cavalry units are not, would count as one of those attached units as well. But yeah, so that's the 95th. I'll just bring you in for a sort of a little bit of a closer look. I'm not going to go into full detail like I normally do, but that's the 95th there. Okay, so next up we're going to go for this division commander here, and I believe he is supposed to be, yep, so this is supposed to be Major General Sir Colin Halkett of the 5th British Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, and I have actually got all 4 units of this what is it, brigade. So we have the 33rd here. Now these guys, I was just looking at these guys as I was setting them up, and you can tell that I did this unit fairly early because there's all sorts of noob mistakes in here. I mean, I've got guys with wings on mixed in where they shouldn't, which is a problem which I had a lot of in my early days of starting Black Powder, when I was making lots of noob mistakes. And there's a similar story with my early French units, although I think I managed to sort a lot of those out because they were just basically easier to do. But maybe eventually I'll maybe I can sort of swap out some of the units with wings and replace them with bog standard normal infantry. But for the moment, I'll keep them as they are, just because it's sort of like a nostalgia factor, show me how noobish I was at the start. Because I think this was my first unit I did more or less after I finished my starter box set. So this is the 33rd, and just give you a quick swing of the flag there. So we have a all warlord. Going back to the 95th, these are a mixture of warlord and Perrys. These guys, the 33rd, are practically all, I think they are actually all warlord, but obviously with the metal command. So that's the 33rd. Then we have the 30th. I believe I've written it on the bottom of the base. So these are the 30th Foot, also known as the Cambridgeshire Regiment, and these guys again, these guys have actually got, these are Perrys, so these would have been again a later unit, and by now I've obviously managed to sort out my battalion plans properly, because I have a unit of Grenadiers there with the sapper. I believe that sapper is a Perry's, and obviously the light company over here. So that is the 30th, and they are mostly Perrys. I think they're all Perrys actually, apart from the metal Perry and the Warlord Command Squad. So that is the 30th, and quick show you their flag. All the flags are GMB. So next up, another part of that brigade, and we have the 69th. The 69th South Lincolnshire Regiment, and you can see the commanding officer there. I've started putting the name of the commanding officers on the bottom of the bases now. I basically decided to start doing it, and basically wrote them all onto the bottom of the bases. And now this is kind of strange, because I decided to, for some bizarre reason which I'll never really understand, I decided to split the front stand with the sergeant on into 2 long rectangular bases. I suppose they would be 20 by 40. Why, I don't know. There's absolutely no reason for it, but for some reason I did. So perhaps one day I'll actually just get around to rebasing that guy onto a normal 40 by 40, because there's absolutely no reason for him to be on a split base really. But yeah, that is the 69th. Now, excuse a little bit of squeakiness, I'll just move along to the next regiment. Now, this is the 4th British Regiment of this brigade, and these guys are the 73rd Foot. So let's just bring those guys in. Here we go. 5th British Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, 73rd Foot, led by Lieutenant Colonel W.C. Harris. So there we go. And these guys are look like they're all Perrys. Yep, I'd say they're all Perrys, and including one of the very rare uses of me actually using a full plastic command stand there with the plastic officer and 2 Perry's plastic standard holders, and obviously the slightly small Perry's standards, so I had to sort of trim up a little bit off the bottom of and top of these flags. So that is the 73rd Foot, and that is the end of that particular division. So that is the first, I suppose, the first brigade that I completed. So yeah, let's go on to the next. So this is I haven't decided what to do with this guy yet, but this is my on foot brigade officer. As you can see, he hasn't been given any sort of designation yet. Something that I'm kind of lacking actually is some well, but actually for both of my armies, I'm lacking sort of brigade commanders. I really do. I think I've got 2 French ones still laying around. I definitely have to zap those guys up. But yeah, so he hasn't got a job at the moment, but I do still plan on using him because I think he's quite a cool figure. I'm pretty sure that eventually I'll probably just use him as a standing figure to go along with perhaps a Perry's colonel or something like that, and sort of replace them in the end. And I'll probably do the same with the French, because I mean, I suppose he'd make quite a good artillery officer because he's kind of on foot. But I was kind of thinking that when we get to my artillery a little bit later on, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I had like an extra officer figure that I made for the artillery, and when I was just setting up here, I thought, well, actually, I could use this guy as a brigade commander, but I'll just have to put him on a bigger base. So that's something that I might well do, and I think this guy would make quite a good filler figure for him. So that's the 5th British Division all done. Next up, we will start with I suppose you could call this the big boys battalion, because they're what I have the most of. So we have the Hanoverians, and they are pretty big. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 battalions of Hanoverians, 4 of which are historically correct to my division, and 2 which are add-on units. Add-on units because, again, because of like being a noob when I first started, and I didn't really have any plans of following any sort of historical divisions. So I just went with 2 divisions that I kind of fancied the look of, and made them into those. So we start off my Hanoverians. Let's just bring this guy forward so I can bring on the light. This is my Hanoverian brigade commander. I believe he's from the Warlord Waterloo Officers pack, and he is designed to be Major General Count Kyle Mange. I've probably hacked that to pieces. Of the 1st Hanoverian Brigade, 3rd British Infantry Division, so he is meant to be a historical commander of the my Hanoverian Brigade. And then we'll start off with the filler units. Now, these guys were featured in a video only a couple of updates back, because I basically repainted them and resorted them out as much as I possibly could. My Griffhorn division, which are Landwehr, so they're kind of, I suppose they'd count as sort of green troops, but I still have a little place in my heart for both my original Hanoverian units, and I was very happy to spend some time tidying them up and making them look a lot more presentable than they were when I first finished them, like over a year ago. So here we have the Griffhorn division, or the Griffhorn battalion, and going on to the next we have the Piene Landwehr battalion, and have I put names on the bottom? I have. So we have the Piene battalion, Now these, I have actually put 5th Hanoverian Brigade, but that's not actually wrong. I will have to make some changes to that because they're not from the 5th Hanoverian Brigade. But that's their commander, Major Westphalen. And these guys are, well, actually both of these guys obviously are Warlord with Warlord Metal Commands. So that is the Piene Landwehr Battalion. Next up, we'll go for, this is quite a recent unit, the Bremen Field Battalion, made up of all Perrys, I believe, and, oh, not Perrys, Victrix. They're all made up of Victrix, and with a Perry's Metal Command. And as you can see, the unit who wear blue trousers, and they're actually a light, well, the field battalion. So on to the next, we have the, I'm not sure about the light in this section because I'm kind of away from the camera a little bit, so I can't really see the screen properly. So we have the Verden Battalion up next. These are fairly recent as well, probably a couple of months ago. Again, these guys are all Victrix with metal command, some metal command and some plastic. But yeah, that's try and get the flag in there. Where are we? There we go. So that's the Piene division, not Piene division, Bremen, Verdun battalion. Next up, we have the Duke of York's 1st. Let's just make sure I've got that right. The Duke of York's, here we go, yeah. The Duke of York's 1st Field Battalion, also known as the Onsbrook, but led by Major Baron Bülow. So that is, they're quite recent as well. They're actually around about a month ago, I think, or maybe 3 weeks ago. And then of course we have the next, the Grubenhagen. I did actually remember the name this time. The Grubenhagen Field Battalion, and these guys are actually, I made a little bit of a mistake when I did my original video on these. These guys are actually a light division, or a light battalion, and not a field battalion. They actually became a field battalion after Waterloo, when they actually became part of the Hoya. So a little bit of a historical foobar there, but still very happy with this bunch. And I suppose if I were to change anything on them, I'd try and get a bugler for the in place of the drum. So that actually completes all my infantry units. So as you can see, my Brits have got a huge amount of infantry. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you include the 95th, that's 11 battalions of infantry. And I do plan on collecting more. I will. I think there's, well, plans are afoot to do King's German Legion next. And I know that there's two. I think there's 2 light battalions and 2 field battalions. So that'll be like another 4 infantry battalions to be added to my British, and I think that more or less, I'm probably not going to do the Jaeger battalions, or at least I've got no plans for doing those at the moment. So that'll probably be the end of this division, and then I'll probably, if I were to add more units to it, there might be like guest units, like the 95th. But there was obviously a lot more sort of units I could add. I could add more Hanoverians. I could add some, you know, like some guards units perhaps. There's all sorts of famous units that I could potentially just add as attached. So next up, we'll go for my probably the smallest contingent of this army, and that is the cavalry. We have a cavalry brigade commander here. Is he? Yeah, he has actually got a name. Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Williamson. I obviously haven't written the rest of his details down, but I believe this guy is actually part of the division that this unit of light dragoons belong to. Again, excuse the squeaking chair. I really do need to try and find some WD-40 to get rid of its squeaking. But I've got this funny feeling that I've tried WD-40ing this chair up before, and it's actually impossible to try and find where the creaking and squeaking is actually coming from. And I believe the last time I did it, which was fair enough many years ago, it kind of more or less failed. But I'll have to look it out and try it again. So yes, this is the focus back on this battalion commander brigade commander for a little bit. So this was a guy from the Peninsular Command Pack, and he is like the only guy that I thought would like make a good cavalry commander, because he's got like a cape on, and he doesn't look sort of too infantry-ish. And he's also the one that I used the rose bush on. Part of my rose bush to actually use a destroyed tree. I was very happy with how this guy's base came out actually, and you can see he's kind of in a sort of a dip because the actual terrain's raised. Yeah, so quite nice guy that. And there we have my only unit of British infantry cavalry so far, the dragoons, and now I believe these guys are the 11th Regiment of Light Dragoons. I haven't got a commanding officer written on those guys, but that's easy enough to do. And these were my first unit of British cavalry. Perrys, very happy with them. Plans are afoot for me to do another unit of British cavalry fairly soon. Possibly as soon as after my next French battalion. And they're probably going to be the Cumberland Hussars. I kind of heard about them from Railway Matt, when he was doing his Hanoverian, one of his Hanoverian playthroughs, and he found by fluke that the Cumberlands were in the on the Perry sheet that you get inside the box, and they're quite an interesting unit, but I suppose I'll save that for when I actually get them. So that is the cavalry, literally at the moment just a brigade commander and one cavalry unit. And now we'll go over to the British artillery contingent. Excuse the squeaking. So this is my artillery contingent, and you can see that what I was talking about this guy here. I think he would make a great brigade commander figure for the artillery. So I may well rebase him, or maybe come up with a way that I can just attach his base to a stand to save me actually rebasing him. Perhaps I'll like plastic putty around it and make it like a little bit of raised ground and just put him on a 40x40. But yeah, quite a nice figure. He's just a guy, an officer that I had left over from my Victrix artillery set, because I only use one officer per battery, so 2 guns would actually only have one officer. But yeah, he turned out really nice actually for such a sort of kind of a thrown together figure. I was very happy with how he came out. And yeah, and like I say, upon second thoughts, I think he would make quite a nice little brigade commander. And you can see that my little contingent of British guns, basically this is made up out of one pack of Victrix, which is 3 guns, and a metal gun added, which I believe is from the Warlord starter set. Where are they? They're actually there. So this was my first gun that I ever did, and I did do a little bit of touching up on these guys, because originally when I did them they had white trousers, so I kind of went in and recoloured their trousers to sort of grey, and then these are a 6-pounder battery. And here we have the Victrix. One of the modifications that I did to these guys actually was as I again, sort of because I was fairly noobish to artillery. Originally, I had one of the guys holding like a powder scoop tool, and that powder scoop tool, I found out later, was actually phased out before Waterloo. I believe it was 1809 it got phased out, and they basically didn't use it anymore. So rather than pulling an arm off and trying to come up with a job for this guy, basically what I did was I basically cut the tool out of their hands. So you're left with a guy like this, and I think it looks really cool actually. I think it did the job. Very simple modification, just literally snipping the tool out of his hand, and I think that did the job. So as you can see, this is the battery that's got the officer on for this particular battery, and together they make a battery of 2 guns with an officer. So that is the first battery. Here's the second battery, and again these guys have had the same little modification done. They've basically had the powder tool snipped out of their hands, and I think it doesn't detract from the sort of the scene of the cannon at all. I think it actually benefits. And these guys are actually on the 8-pounder, so these guys have got the heavier British guns. And of course, there's the stand with the officer over there. There. So that is the end of my British Army overview, and you can see that it's really grown in the space of I suppose you could say 2 years of focusing on black powder, because obviously it took me a year to do my starter set. But yeah, I'm very happy with them, and I'll plans are afoot to do my French next, and they'll probably be done when I finish my next planned battalion, and then I'll do my French. And you'll see the difference between the British and the French, because the French will still be slightly under, well, quite a bit under infantry wise, but like I say, my French are bigger in other sectors, i.e. artillery and cavalry. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed filming it. You know, for sort of sitting on the shelf behind me, sometimes you don't, when they're all sort of stuffed onto a shelf, you don't really get to see the grandeur of them, and it's really cool to just see all these battalions with all their colours just sort of, you know, simulatedly flying in the wind, and it's just quite a cool setup. If only you could sort of oh, I've just got the only artillery limber that I have actually been bothered to make in the front here. I really do need to make up the other 2 just because they're quite good scenery. But yeah, just to add to the flavour of the army, and hopefully one day this lone chap here will actually have a proper job. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Catch you later.